Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Krashy, and the conversation about matchmaking and Pokemon Unite continues. Again, nothing but love towards Spragels. We have very different perspectives, and I think that that's totally fine. I think that this has been a really interesting way to have this conversation, and I was actually even talking with a friend of mine about how me and Spragels could have like a full sit-down stream and really dive into it, but we've kind of chosen this like distanced social media conversation, and it's just a lot of fun. We get to make some content out of it, and hopefully you're enjoying the conversation as well. So make sure you drop a comment, like this video, and subscribe for future Pokemon Unite content. Let's go ahead and dive into it because there's a lot to unpack here, and I've actually watched this video twice and I've collected a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to try to go through each of my points while I'm kind of like reacting to Spragles' video and giving my thoughts on particular points that he presents. So here we go.
Sure to take a look at something, especially something that we love and enjoy.
Coffee.
Think about ways that we can improve it or ways that we could do it better. I know, as a huge Star Wars fan myself, I spend far too much time thinking about The Last Jedi and how many things I would change about
everything. Movie was terrible.
This reminds me of the conversation around Pokemon Unite and the idea that we need to fix matchmaking, something that you've probably heard thrown around a lot. Fix matchmaking, even though I think a lot of people don't know exactly what this means or what this would look like for the game. For those of you who are unaware, the term fix means to mend or repair, and the term matchmaking means
dude, this guy, bro. This guy is so goofy.
Nerf Mewtwo. You know,
I love Jake so much.
A little longer than that. I think the term fixed matchmaking is thrown around primarily by two groups of people. One group, and the largest group, the vast majority, are the kinds of players who attribute all of their losses to their allies and all of their wins to themselves. Hey, why am I pointing to myself? If only they fix.
So I think that this part is partially true, or like rather true, and I will say that there is this unintended side effect. It's impossible to avoid, where I will talk about saying fixing matchmaking and changing ranked, and people who have no business being a part of the conversation will kind of piggyback off of it, and it sucks because they're like, yeah, you're right, I can't win my games, and I'm negative win rate, or I'm like 50% this season, it's so bad. And it's like, you don't actually fall under the category that I'm in, where I'm explaining why it needs to be different. So no, fixed matchmaking is not going to make you win all your games, but it would be better, and we're going to talk about that. So I do think that happens, where people piggyback off of the kind of sentiment of fixing matchmaking, and that sucks a little bit.
Fixed matchmaking, I would win every single game. The second, and in my opinion, much smaller group, actually have a very deep understanding of matchmaking and a rank system inside of a game, and have some very reasonable changes that they would love to see in Pokemon Unite. In many ways, the people who want to fix matchmaking are right. Sometimes the matchmaking in Pokemon Unite is an absolute mess. You have high skill players being...
So I think it's important for me to like kind of contest and contend some of his points. So for example, in this one, like I want to be very specific. I also think this video is going to be long, so sorry about that. He said sometimes, you know, the matchmaking Unite can be very bad, and I think that it's always like, if you're like an actually objectively good player, and we're going to talk about that too, it's always bad, and that is part of the main problem. And yeah, we'll continue to explore that. So
matched with low skill players, or even worse, sometimes full-on griefers, and it is their job to try to carry their team almost single-handedly. This leaves high-level players with a very frustrating situation.
This is basically the Unite experience entirely.
They have to single-handedly carry, or they need to lose, and this is extremely difficult and disappointing if one match you don't want to play the meta and you want to play Wigglytuff or Greninja, or you just want to be a supporter for a match and you don't want to be responsible for picking up all of the KOs. You may be surprised to find out that Pokemon Unite does have a skill-based matchmaking system inside of the game. It just might not work exactly the way we want it to. Pokemon Unite, like many games similar to it, does use a hidden matchmaking rating, often known as MMR, to rank players.
Yes, it does.
Games. Interestingly enough, they even talked about this in a dev letter a little while back, and they explained pretty clearly how they match players into games. It was an interesting read, and I'm actually surprised that they shared some of that information.
Okay, so I want to share a little bit of my thoughts on MMR. God, this is a jarring screenshot.
Your MMR ranking.
So some of my thoughts on how MMR works is, I think an easy question that someone could ask is, well, why is there MMR if you have master points or your rank in general? And the thing with MMR is that it's just really, really specific, right? Like because you have a hidden MMR value the second you start playing ranked. So like, let's say hypothetically, every single player that ever starts an account starts at 1,000. And let's say the highest players on the ladder now who are just blowing through things are up to like 4,000. That number is relevant because the master points don't kick in until 1,200. And then even then, the way that the system with master points and winning and losing is kind of weighted. You're gaining like 12 points and you're losing like 6 for a really long time. So master points aren't really an objective way of looking at skill, and hidden MMR is the most accurate way of actually knowing how good a player is. And now here's the kicker: hidden MMR is the thing that's tied directly most to hidden MMR is win rate, because win rate is objective. You won or you lost. That percentage is objective. It's not a question whether or not you won or you lost, and the MMR will only go up or go down based on your win rate. Now, don't get me wrong, there are variables that change that MMR value. Like if you were in a game where the probability for you to lose was higher than the probability for you to win, you would gain more. So win rate is the closest thing to MMR. But MMR, and the reason why it's hidden, is because it is incredibly accurate. It knows exactly how good you are. The problem is that their MMR matching is wide open, and we're going to continue to talk about this later. So I don't have any doubts that their MMR system is working. Well, minus the fact that they don't reset it on new seasons sometimes for whatever reason. But that the way that they're using those MMR numbers is not being used correctly.
Is a ranking separate from your actual in-game rank. So it's not your master rank or your world ranking or something like that. In fact, a veteran player can have a higher MMR than someone inside of master rank.
Absolutely.
In Pokemon Unite, based on how the ranking system works and based on how the MMR system works. MMR is derived from a few things: your wins, your losses. Are you on a big win streak? Are you on a big loss streak? Are you winning against high skilled players, high MMR players?
These are all those MMR variables. This is all true.
There are a lot of factors that go into it, and I bet a lot of things that we really have no idea are part of our MMR.
It's possible.
We've seen some very interesting effects of the MMR system when a new season will change over and players will go on massive losing streaks, like Chris Heroes and Bruv and Toon did this season, or I ran into a couple seasons ago. There have been multiple seasons where they have not shifted your in-game rank and your MMR at all. So
yeah,
your in-game rank
it's weird.
got sent back.
That seems like a bug, but it is weird.
Works, I can't remember. And then your MMR stayed exactly the same, so you were paired with some really wacky games on your climb back to master rank. Pokemon Unite's current matchmaking system, like any matchmaking system, has its strengths and its weaknesses. Pokemon Unite, as a mobile title, I think primarily worldwide, but there's still a lot of players on Switch. Pokemon Unite focuses on getting you into games very, very quickly, and hopefully games with very, very low ping, and then have those games balanced mathematically based on MMR as closely as they can while fitting all of these parameters. They want you in games fast, that play really, really well, and hopefully these games are relatively balanced.
So he loses me here a little bit whenever he says that plays really, really well, because I'm not exactly sure what that means, but he is correct. The matchmaking systems are just a set of rules. That's all it is. You give this system, this program, a set of rules, and you tell it to go do that thing. And then usually how matchmaking systems will work is that those rules will loosen. Like the grip on the rules may be really tight, and then over time they loosen because you want to find a match. The problem with Unite's rules is that they're already pretty wide, and the only loosening that really happens is for ping. So you basically get like 60 seconds to a 60-second matchmaking timer where it's going to try to find you a match within their set of rules, and then it just kind of like opens up and says fuck it and like puts you in a different server with like high ping and stuff. And so what I'm assuming the current main set of matchmaking rules is like ping, mathematically like even or close to even MMR average, and I guess that's about it, and speed. But that's really about it. Like it's not really trying to do much more. So again, let's talk about hidden MMR values. Let's say Chris Hero is a 4,000 MMR player and there's 1,500 MMR players. Well, I'm gonna pull up a calculator. So let's do 4,000. We'll just do 1,000 or 2,000 plus 2,000. That's one of his teammates. This is another 2,000. That's a second of his teammate. This is his third teammate. and this is his fourth teammate. That would create an average MMR of 12,000. Now, the system just wants to find another team that's close to 12,000. But you know what they could do? They could do 12,000 divided by 5 and have a team of full 2400s, and Chris Heroes is playing in a really terrible lobby all of a sudden because he's playing in a lobby where everybody is at around 2,000 to 2,400 and he's at 4,000 being a standout player. Or it could do the same thing where the other team has a 4,000 MMR player and a bunch of 2,000s. So the point is that yes, it's creating mathematically fair and balanced matches, but for the player and for the other players as well, for all of these players, this is not a fair match. And a lot of the time, and this is more important, it's not a fun match. It's not fun to play in this scenario where the people that you're playing with clearly don't have the same game knowledge and skill as you. This is the problem. We're also going to continue to dive deeper into some other problems, so let's continue listening.
Those are the priorities of matchmaking inside of Pokemon Unite. Pokemon Unite's matchmaking system and greatest weakness is it won't always pair you with players who are of equal skill level. And
it never pairs you with equal skill level.
Inside your games when you feel like you have to
almost never
low win rate players, or when you're just feeling like you're not going up against someone who is around your skill level, so you can't get better facing off against someone who is about the same as you are.
So I don't know if Jake does this intentionally. Also, I just realized my camera placement is going to be blocking him the majority of the video. So sorry, go watch his video. Definitely do. But he has a way of making it sound. The way that Jake explains things has a way of making it sound like like this is sometimes a thing that happens. But the problem is that this is a thing that happens every game. Like when you're a high level player, you're never playing with people that are good. And I say never, like I want to say 99% of the time. If we want to not deal in absolutes and be ridiculous, like 90 to 99% of the time, you're not playing with people that are close to your skill level. They're always way lower than you. And it's not because there aren't people out there to play with, although we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that because the system is also using them to create these kinds of games too, because it's just fast. That's what the main system wants, is fast, low ping, and fast matches. And then hopefully they're kind of mathematically balanced, which we also know already that they're not actually balanced games. They're just mathematically balanced games, which is basically nothing. So yeah, Jake has a way of like saying like, oh, it can be frustrating when this happens, but it's like, but this is always, in my opinion. So
steel sharpens steel, as they say, or at least I hope they
I like that saying,
because I've been quoting it a lot lately. Changing the matchmaking and the rank system inside of Pokemon Unite to something that more closely pairs you based on skill level sounds, and I would say is, essentially good, but it comes with a lot of drawbacks, and I actually don't think it's one of the bigger problems facing Pokemon Unite. And moreover, I don't think Pokemon Unite is designed for this purpose.
This is a huge point right here. Whether or not it's one of the bigger problems of Pokemon Unite, I think is a little it encroaches on semantics, because I think it's like subjective to say what is the biggest problem for Unite. And now I guess the way that you choose that is by picking the majority player base and finding what their problem with the game is. So for me, I would say that fixing ranked and changing the game is absolutely the biggest issue with the game. I'm not as concerned about balance as I am having a reason to get on and play the game. And currently with the rank system, it just doesn't serve my needs. It doesn't give me anything to grind for. It doesn't give me challenging matches. It's just nonsense. It's a clown fiesta shit show of games that I don't want to play. So even if Mewtwo is super broken, I would play the game and would hopefully have a pick ban in ranked. But even if there wasn't, I would still play the game and try to grind it because I want to climb and I want to play and have competitive matches. But for me, that's just me. I think the majority of players are more concerned with balance. We're going to talk about that in this video because Jake's going to go in that direction. But it definitely is subjective, and in a way, because that's the majority, I think it's also objective to say that balance is probably the biggest issue, but there's a lot of connected moving pieces here. So
if Pokemon Unite were to adapt a ranking system similar to League of Legends or Valorant or something like that, a majority of the player base would still land kind of smack dab in the middle and will be paired into games fairly quickly. This is relatively true and essentially doesn't really change the matchmaking of the game too much for many players.
For most players.
System inside of Pokemon Unite that would pair players more closely based on skill level sounds like a very good thing, and I agree. I think it would be great to have more evenly paired games. There are just a lot of questions around it, and
I'm here to answer them.
Is this something that Unite is trying to achieve?
No. This is something that they are specifically not trying to achieve. I want to pause on that note to say that because it is very obvious, and we're going to continue to talk about this point. I know I say that a lot here. We're going to continue to talk about, like, well, what is Unite actually trying to do? It is very obvious that after 2 years, this is something they are not trying to achieve. So all of this to say, I'm going to throw out a probably a wild thought here. I do all this discussion for the love of it and for the enjoyment of the content and the conversation. I know it's never going to change. Like, I'm so confident that this will never change that I'm not actually here pushing for change. I was doing that in the past. I'm not anymore. I enjoy my relationship with Unite now, although I think the game is bad. I think the game is good enough to hold a player base, and that the Pokemon IP is strong enough, and the design of the characters is interesting enough and fun enough. The mechanics of the game are fun enough for people to continue playing. I believe all of that's fine. They will never fix this. I promise you. It maybe in years, like slowly trickled in year over year, they'll slightly improve some of these things because retention might falter and they need to kind of find ways to keep those people playing. Like Chinese betas allegedly got ranked mode with a draft, so we may see some of these things slightly change over time, slowly. But all things considered, for the majority of the game's lifespan, I don't think it's something they're gonna do, and so we'll see. But no, they're not intentionally trying to do this.
What are they trying to achieve with their matchmaking system and their ranked mode in general?
Retention.
Where is the competitive area for Pokemon Unite? Is it in their main ranked system? And more importantly, does the game survive with this change to its ranked system?
So to that question, does the game survive with this change to the rank system? I think that the game would grow with this change to the rank system, because at a really like rudimentary level, we're talking about changing the matchmaking and the rank system. At like a really macro big level, big picture level, I'm talking about changing the entire game. Now, I'm going to have to do that here in a little bit and explain how you change the entire game. But I think that it is absolutely essential in order for any of the fixed matchmaking, fixed ranked discussions to continue, because it's not that simple. It's never been that simple as to say fixed matchmaking. I mean, I think, and just for the sake of saying, like, yes, I've been saying that matchmaking has been bad for a long time, but it's taken me a long time to also formulate this entire opinion too. Originally, I think that even my way of thinking was rather rudimentary, where I was just like, oh, matchmaking sucks, I need to change it. And then that turned into, well, actually, the rank system's really bad, and that needs to be changed too. And then that's turned into, well, actually, you know what? They really need to do a better job of making standards a better mode. And so we're going to talk about a lot of that as the video continues, and we kind of find the right time for it.
Without question, having games where players are paired more closely based on their skill level is a good thing inside of a video game in general.
It's a necessity for ranked.
World champions playing with players who have no idea what's going on inside the game, and it's just 50 KOs to 0. That wouldn't really be fun for anyone. Well,
exactly.
I mean, I'll take a couple of those games. Throw me a few of those games every time I'm on stream. I think the big questions with Pokemon Unite and its matchmaking system are, what is the purpose of its matchmaking?
Retention.
What would this change mean for the game? And is this something Pokemon Unite is even trying to do?
No, they're not trying to do it.
Called Pokemon Unite's ranked mode a glorified standard. And while that is not exactly true, I understand what they are saying, because the ranked mode inside the game does not take enough time to pair players accurately based on their skill level. Instead, it just sort of sorts them as best it possibly can.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there because a lot of that is, there's a lot to unpack there. People say that Unite's ranked mode is a glorified standard mode. I say that specifically. I'm not saying he's saying I say that, but like people do say that. But I say that specifically because it absolutely is a glorified standard mode. There is no way to grind ranked reasonably for the vast majority of the player base that's not playing 5 stacks. There is no rewards outside of playing ranked. So like it just is the main mode of the game where everybody is going to play. It has all of the casual players, like outside of like quick play and stuff, but it has a ton of casual players that aren't like super skilled, medium, low skill players at the highest rank. It is absolutely the main mode that probably the majority of Pokemon Unite players engage with. It is the standard mode of this game. It's not a prestigious ranked mode. There aren't good rewards for it. It doesn't have like super serious skill-based matchmaking and strong MMR, or like matchmaking with MMR. It is is absolutely the standard mode of this game, other than the name, right? Like standard, and here's the thing, everybody would agree with this, standard is a dead mode, right? So now you have to question, well, what the fuck is standard for? And again, we're going to continue to dive into that, but I absolutely believe this is like the ranked mode in this game is just standard. It's standard that has some fake bullshit rank system sitting on top of it that doesn't even work. So no, they're not trying to like fix this and change this. I do think that if they did make changes to the ranked mode, you would see growth for the game. I just do. I think that it would give so much purpose to the game, and it would give so much purpose to people wanting to improve, and it would give casual players a standard mode that actually is welcoming to them, and something they can grind. I feel like I missed a point, so I'm going to go back and listen a little bit more.
Unite is even trying to do. People have called Pokemon Unite's ranked mode a glorified standard, and while that is not exactly true, I understand what they are saying, because the ranked mode inside the game does not take enough time to pair players
this part here
based on their skill level. Instead, it just sort of sorts them as best it possibly can.
So it doesn't take enough time to accurately place people by their skill level. Well, that's a rank system design fault right there as well. So it's not really just matchmaking isn't pairing people of equal skill level. It's that the rank system can't even decide what that is, right? Like if you're trying to sort people in groups based on like what color shirt they're wearing, but everybody's wearing the same shirt, like you're just going to make one giant group. And that's essentially what Unite's matchmaking is, right? Like everybody is exactly the same. It throws everybody into the same matches, more or less. Don't get me wrong, it's not literally that way, because you don't often run into like veteran players in Masters, but the bucket is so big that it's pretty common that basically everybody, if you just play enough, is going to get to Ultra Masters and then be in each other's games. And so it's so wide that it's not like it's not just taking enough time, but the system's designed to be this way intentionally. And yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
The real question is, how long would it take to pair players accurately based on their skill level? And I think this is something
depends on your rank.
A lot of people don't want to come to terms with. First, if like in a majority of games, most players just sit in the center area, then we're not really talking about substantial matchmaking changes at all, except for at the high and very, very low ends of the spectrum for the players. So let's talk about the high end of the spectrum. The very, very high ranking players would have to wait a long time for games. They would have to sit there with their phone or their Switch open for 10 plus minutes, hoping that other players who are also very high ranked that they probably know and play against all the time are queuing into the game at the same time. I highly doubt players are going to wait around for these games like they do in some other games that offer a much longer match, something like League of Legends, but I guess it's possible. I just feel like it is very doubtful that you will see players doing something like this, especially considering the player pool they're going to be playing with are people that they all already know essentially already.
Okay, so this is where we have to do some serious talking about something that I feel like Jake is just completely not considering when it comes to rank systems entirely. So because the conversation we're having is so simplified down to like just changing ranked and matchmaking, but the conversation I'm having is so multi-layered, I have to bring everybody up to speed to say that like it really isn't enough just to change matchmaking. You have to change basically everything. So now is the time to have that conversation. So first and foremost, I'm going to list the changes that need to be made for any of the things that I want this game's ranked mode to be to even make sense. First and foremost, you need to remove bot matches from all standard and ranked playlists. This is absolutely essential to not accidentally water down the experience of either which playlist. Like having bot matches in ranked is a joke because it completely waters down the experience of actually having to play against good players to grind. And even in the current system, like where the ranks are just for free and the matchmaking is terrible, it still actually just waters down the system because it's just giving people free wins. So you have to remove it from ranked for that reason, but you also have to remove it from standard to incentivize people to actually want to play standard. Right now, standard is such a barren wasteland of no players because everybody plays ranked that it's more likely that you will probably get a bot match when you play standard than it is that you will get actual players. This is a design flaw. This is absolutely an issue. If you have have bots in your game and people want to play bots, you just simply give them the option to queue for AI and play bots. So the reason why this is such an important foundation for all of this conversation is because in order to incentivize players to play ranked seriously, you need to incentivize standard in order to be played casually. So while I call Pokemon Unite's ranked mode a standard mode, it's because it is the main mode that everybody plays where they know they're not going to get bots. It absolutely acts as the main mode because people just want to play against other players. And so what you do, and this is very important, is that you create all these daily, weekly challenges, these like little things that they put in the game for standard mode. You create a grind and something to play for standard mode. You give players that option to grind ranked if they want to grind ranked, which that is in itself its own reward. We're going to continue to talk about that. Or you give them the option to actually engage in standard, where there is no pick ban, where there is, a little bit more loose matchmaking, where you can just play and have fun with your friends and actually just enjoy the experience without the stress of even having to worry about ranked. But simultaneously, ranked has to be much more serious in order for there to be that casual and competitive separation. Now, what does that look like? Well, if the ranked mode is much more serious, now you have pick, ban, solo, duo, queue ranked system. And this is all part of fixing ranked and matchmaking. It's not just as simple as just fix matchmaking, just fix ranked. You actually do have to have solo, duo, queue, and pick ban phase, because what happens is when you have a solo duo ranked mode, this is more important for the sake of this part of the conversation, you can actually climb the ladder. So Spragels' concern here is like, I don't think high rated players are going to sit there and like wait in queue for long periods of time. I just think people are like kind of underestimating how long it could be, and I just don't think players will sit there and do that. But what I think he's kind of like missing out on here is that what is the incentive of playing the ranked mode? Well, the incentive to continue to be a high-rated player playing the ranked mode is to, one, hopefully chase after much more prestigious rewards, which I think is something that the game needs. I think that there should be like high tier master rewards, and one of those is a super simple one in my opinion. You do a title for your profile, like for your little trainer card, and it'll say like, oh, season, I don't even know what season we're on, season 18, top 50, like in the world, right? And that's a title that you earned when the game season was over. You earned that title, and they give that to the top 100 players. Another one that you can earn is a seasonal holoware. You make a holoware. They used to do this. You make a holoware for a Pokemon. You give that to all the people that hit masters, or you do 3 versions of it. You make a holoware and then you do 3 different coloration versions of it. One's for 1200, one's for 1400, one's for 1600, or you push that further. One's for 2000. I don't know what the numbers are, right, in this scenario, because I don't know how different the system is or how hard it is to grind. And not only that, when you have a solo duo queue ranking system, you have a leaderboard that you can actually climb. Right now, people forget that there's a leaderboard that you can climb, because guess what? None of us are climbing it. None of us, unless you're playing on a 5-stack team, we're not climbing it. So why would people sit in queue that long? They want the reward. They want the feeling of ranking up. They want the title to show and prove how good they are. They want the holoware to show how high they got. They want that seasonal leaderboard to say their name at it, so they can screenshot it, they can post it, they can bank it, it can become an achievement on their account. They get a sticker that shows, it'll say like S18 number sign 50, and that's a sticker they can put on their profile. It's the sentiment of, if you build it, they will come. That's what this is. So it's not as simple as, oh, fix matchmaking, change this. It's about fundamentally designing the game where you can have your cake and eat it too as a company, where you can have your casual players who are playing casuals in standard, and you can have the not so good players, because I don't want to build a rank system only for the top 1% players. That's not how other games work either. There's a lot of players that play in gold and platinum in League of Legends. There's a ton. It's the majority of the player base that plays, or the ranked player base at least, that plays in gold and platinum. And you would have that same thing. You would have players fighting to get out of veteran, fighting to get into ultra and out of ultra into masters, fighting to push themselves higher in masters. So it's not that simple as like, oh, I just don't think they would wait for it. It's like, I think they absolutely would. And I think that if you find a competitive title where there is a rank system that actually works like this on a bell curve, where they're fighting to be at the top of that rank system, and it actually matters to be, that's important. It actually matters to be at the top of that rank system. They absolutely will wait. And it's an expectation that they'll wait. I think any high rated player in most games know they're going to wait because, of course, they have to wait. They're the best in the world, right? So it's about building it all out so that way it works.
Considering the player pool they're going to be playing with are people that they all already know essentially already. I think what will happen is what happens in any game. Players will create even more Smurfs so that they can get into games quickly and they can start playing against opponents.
That already happens now. People have multiple Smurf accounts. Most probably competitive players have 2-3 accounts that they play on. And again, this point here personally for me is void of thinking about the rewards, right? Thinking about like, well, why are you actually playing ranked? What is there to actually gain? So if you play on a Smurf account and you just want to stomp and have fun, people are going to do that. And I think that that's a thing that every game is struggling to combat. In fact, Dota recently made like a blog post where they banned a ton of Smurf accounts and they basically said Smurfing is not allowed in their game. How are they combating that? I don't know. I would honestly, personally, have to do more research to kind of bring more of an opinionated thought to that discussion. But that is a side effect of serious rank systems. So I can't pretend like there aren't pros and cons to having systems like this. Smurfing would definitely be a con. It would be something that would have to be looked at. But I still think that for the majority of people that want to just push and grind and get to the highest tiers, they're going to play on their main accounts. Not to say the Smurfing wouldn't happen. It would. It does. So, I mean, it already happens. So
any person who is going to be streaming will not be able to sit there for 15 or 20 minutes so that they can wait for a match. Instead,
they would
have multiple Smurf accounts that they pop onto and can hop into games. I don't think it really changes much on the high level of the game. I sincerely think that players are vastly overestimating everyone's excitement to sit around waiting for a 10-minute match of Pokemon Unite.
I think that that is only true if you're talking about with the way that it's built currently. If we just had like 5-stack enabled flex queue with no pick ban phase and no better rewards, then yeah, you might be right. But that's why it's not just as simple as saying like, oh, they need to change this. They need to fix everything. And it's a hard conversation to have because in order to see it the way that I see it, you have to understand that it's possible for it to be that way. And a lot of my opinions come from playing other games. It comes from having, 10 plus years, 12 years in MOBAs where it's like, hey, when you build out the rewards and you give people a grind and there's something they can actually get for it, they're going to try really hard. In a game like Unite, there's no reason to play. And so guess what? People don't. They get Masters, they get 1600, they stop playing. Or they only 5-stack because that's an option, which is insane to me in a rank system that it's an option without it being a separate queue. So, I don't know.
On the low end, we kind of encounter the same problem. The question is, what do you do with these extremely low end players? And I think there are some good solutions to this outside of what we're talking about here with matchmaking. But beginner players, and then also sort of very confused, might be the best term, players inside the game are also not going to wait around for a long time for these matches. So essentially we have a ranked mode that is very similar to what we are looking at right now. People could argue that it's not, but it is essentially a very similar matchmaking situation to what we're dealing with right now.
I completely disagree. So this is where we have to talk about MMR buckets. So the way that matchmaking should work is that you would have a literal bucket, right? Like, I don't know how to draw a bucket. A literal bucket of player skill. And this is how you match them. And so the reason why in a system like this, the high-end players would wait a long time is because this bucket would be really small. Now I'm going to draw a really tiny bucket or whatever. It'd be really small. Like the MMR ranges would be, again, I'm making up numbers because that's just kind of how I'm doing it. It'd be like 3,000 to 4,000. And honestly, that might even be pretty open. But down here, these buckets would be really large. Like this would be one bucket. Like this could be like one bucket, and then this could be like another bucket, right? Like I know I drew it over here, but you get the point. So in all actuality, you do your matchmaking based on rank too. It's not just like a one-size-fits-all equation. So, whereas this bucket would be really small and it would just be like the top 1% of players, most people, like 99% of the player base would not have this issue because the reality is the skill discrepancy between, I need to change colors. The skill discrepancy between, say, this bucket and this bucket is really big, but the skill discrepancy from someone that's just starting out in ranked, like maybe even just like to the center over here, it's really not that big. Like a lot of these players are still trying to learn the game and figure it out. And while someone over here may not like what this person's doing, it's the same thing as if this player over here was playing in one of these buckets. They're not going to like what they're doing. So you have to prove yourself through these buckets, get to higher ranks, get your way out of the bell curve and off into the higher ranks. And so the matchmaking for 99% of the players, I promise you, would be almost instant. It would just still be almost instant. Now, I will say that because I'm trying to incentivize standard and everybody essentially plays ranked, it would go up a little bit. I think that we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 3 minutes for like total matchmaking time for 99% of the player base. I think for really, really high rated players, it could be anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. And also depending on the time of day and the region. I think that's also super important because a lot of this conversation is super hard to have whenever you're talking about, like, say, low population regions. And it would definitely take different kind of tuning for different regions. But for, like, say, North America or Europe or China or Japan, that I believe have like high populations, I don't think it would be a problem at all. And so this is what matchmaking should look like, where you create skill ranges. It's not about having a perfect match where, say, like a 1K average team of 5 people is perfectly versus a 1K average team of 5 people. Like that's not what matchmaking is supposed to do. It's supposed to create a game that's like 1,000 versus, say, 1,200, and there's some variance, because variance is what creates probability to win or lose, and probability to win or lose is what gives people extra points or takes more points from them. So all of this is very, very important to know, that it's not about a perfect match, and we're gonna have to contest that point coming up in a little bit, but it's about creating buckets of reasonable matches. Right now, this is what matchmaking should look like, where you create buckets of reasonable matches at different skill tiers. This is what the matchmaking is currently. This is what the current matchmaking is. And anything out here, this is like veteran and below. Like, and this is all ultra to like low masters. So I should have tightened it a little bit more, but this is like low masters. And then high masters is like in its own bucket a little bit, and not even really, because you can still look, it's like there's like a cutoff, like here and here. There's like an overlapping cutoff. So you get the point. Like, these are not reasonable matches. These are terrible matches. And it's every single game that you play. So yeah, not great. Also, I do want to make a point that, like, somewhere over here at like the 4-minute mark, Spragels was like, oh yeah, I think match times for the majority of players wouldn't go up, and then here he's basically saying that they are going up. So it's a little confusing to me personally.
And I do recognize that people would say that most of the players who kind of sit in this big, bulky center area of the game, who are all relatively average at Pokemon Unite, will have a better playing experience not being paired with...
Everybody would have a better playing experience. Every single player that enacts with this system would.
I would argue that this is going to be either very, very difficult or untrue. By very difficult, I mean that the queue times are going to go up for every single player in the game. They simply have to if the matchmaking becomes stricter.
Maybe 60 seconds.
Way around it, and there's really no good answer as to what that's going to look like in the game. Would matchmaking take another minute? I don't think anyone's going to stress too hard about that. Would it take another 2 minutes, 3, 5? At what point do players start hopping off the game? Because for Pokemon Unite, and really any video game, this is an extremely important question. Pokemon Unite's current matchmaking system is clearly based on player retention. They want people to continue playing the game. And I know some people aren't excited to hear that, but that's the truth. They want people to hop on Pokemon Unite and get into a game. That's very, very important for them, because they're so...
All right, have your cake and eat it too moment. This is why standard would exist. So let's say hypothetically, because again, I'm very confident in saying that for the vast majority of the player base, their queue times would barely it would barely go up, maybe 30 to 60 seconds. But let's say hypothetically it goes up by 2 minutes in total. And let's say, for the average player matches a 5-minute wait time. Sometimes if you really want to grind ranked, if it matters to you and it's prestigious enough and the reward is there and the leaderboard grind is there and you want to prove yourself, if all of those factors line up, then you'll wait it. And if you don't want to wait it and you're like, you know what, this sucks, then you'll play standard. Because for the majority of the player base, they probably want to play standard anyways. They just don't have the option to. And right now, the way that the game is designed and the way that the matchmaking is designed, it is for retention. It's to give everybody the highest rank for free, to have them in matches really, really quickly. It's an ego inflating system. It's matchmaking based on retention. It's absolutely a system that is like lying to their player base, bullshitting them into thinking that they're good at the game, and giving them the ability to hit the highest rank in a game when most likely they've never done that in any other game ever, or this might be the first ranked game they've ever played. And it's just nonsense. It's capitalist matchmaking. It's literally bullshitting people for the sake of giving them this like feeling of accomplishment, and then it retains them as a player because the matches are fast, they hit the highest rank every single season, and then hopefully they either continue spending or spend money. It's a bad system. You should be disgusted by this. It's not good for the player. It's not good for high rated players. It's not good for low rated players. It's just bad.
Many other things that people can be doing, so many other games, so many games inside this genre, so many things that you can do on your phone. They are fighting TikTok for your attention.
Absolutely.
On a mobile device.
Absolutely, they
need players to hop into games, and if you think that everyone is cool with a 3-minute queue time, I can tell you something. There's a reason there isn't a 3-minute queue time. They didn't just come up with this idea for no reason. They are trying to keep players inside of a game and keep them playing. I think things like this sound good because we'll all say, oh yeah, just another 3 minutes, another 5 minutes. I'd wait 5 minutes for the best game as opposed to 15 seconds for a game that I thought was bad.
And again, I think that Jake is just looking at it at like a kind of rudimentary level where he's saying like, yeah, for the current experience, like people aren't going to want to wait that long. And I agree. I think like even for slightly better matches, but in the current system that has like no reason to actually grind ranked. Yeah, I agree. I don't think people would wait for that. But if you build a prestigious system, you build a leaderboard that people can tangibly grind because it's solo duo, you build the competitive setting with pick ban phase, and you build better rewards for these systems, then absolutely people will wait for it because they want that prestige. Prestige is so rewarding. Seasonal, never returning rewards like titles and a hollowware that doesn't come back with like 3, 4, 5 variations of it is so rewarding. Shit, make 5 variations of the hollowware for that season, give it away at vet with like a recolor, another recolor, or give away a completely different Pokemon. Make two Pokemon for the season, give away a hollowware for veteran, recolor it for ultra, make another Pokemon have a hollowware, and then give 3 different recolors of that at different tiers of masters. Like, give rewards. And people would say, or someone might argue and say, well, there's going to be giving away money. Why would they do that? Because it builds a better game that they can engage with, that they would enjoy, that they would probably retain more players on, and maybe even grow the game to a larger audience because the game has something to achieve. It has something to play for. It's common that people will say, oh yeah, I hit 1600 and I quit playing. And it's like, well, why would you want that? Like, retention, like, I think that the way that they're going about retention, albeit that is what they're going for, is actually bad. And don't get me wrong, they are quickly playing the game and they can hop in and quickly play the game, but you can have your cake and eat it too. You just have to build ranked to be ranked. You build standard to be standard, and people can play quick play the way they want to. So standard would be that, like, you know what, I'm not really in the mood to grind or play super serious or, wait right now. I think I'm going to play a few standard matches. And there would be a lot of people that would do that. So I think Jake is kind of seeing it as this, like, if they do this, we could potentially lose a lot of players because they don't want to wait. And the way I'm seeing it is like, if they do this, you may gain a lot of players because you have an actual ranked mode that's worth playing. And it could really incentivize people to want to get better and to try hard and to come and play this game in the first place. And for the people that aren't interested in engaging with that, they can just play the game the way that they've always been playing it, just without a rank system on top of it.
But the real question comes here as to whether you would actually wait a long time for games, even though
you would have the choice to. You would have the choice to for ranked or not for standard.
For games, and how much better would that game actually be?
A lot better.
All of these ideas around matchmaking are all set up around this perfect scenario. To be fair, I think they're looking at this situation with rose-colored glasses, and as you can see, mine are clear, baby. A little dirty, actually. What's wrong with my glasses? The truth is, to have games paired more accurately based on your skill level, you need a lot of players inside Pokemon Unite.
That's
And
true.
I can tell you from the viewership numbers on Twitch and the numbers we've seen of player base inside the game, I honestly don't think there are enough players to give people the matchmaking experience that they are hoping to experience if they were to change all this. I think
So I have to contend this point because I've been thinking about this one a lot. I don't think that that's true. I think that Pokemon Unite actually has a lot of players. So we saw the post. I'll find it from Suluwu, and this is just data about a certain type of like Android device or like way that you can track Android devices. So I'm gonna open up this image really quickly. Sorry, I had to download it because I forgot to do that earlier. So we have this image, and it's basically Galaxy players over the last 32 weeks, and this is just Galaxy gamers. And if I remember correctly, it's like either just a section of Android players. It's like just Galaxy users, and so the player base just on Galaxy phones has gone up to 158,000 down to 94,000. But let's cut it in the middle somewhere here. Let's make an average and say 1,000 or 100,000. That's 100,000 players on a singular platform. That's not even accounting for every Android device. So I don't know. Let's jump it back up to 150K, and then let's multiply that by 3 different platforms. 150K for iOS, 150K for Switch. Now, obviously, I don't think that the numbers are even like that, but I'm gonna hypothesize that the player base could be or has been somewhere between 200 to like 600,000 players at a given time. That's a lot of fucking people, man. Like that is a ton of people. League of Legends. I've done this before. League of Legends has a concurrent player base of about 700,000 plus as of August 2021. So, and League of Legends, that might be 1 million now. I don't know, but you get the point. Like, even a couple 100,000 is a fuck ton of people. And yes, that's split over multiple servers, but that's a lot of people. So I don't think that the game has a low enough player base that it wouldn't like work. I think that it would work. I often queue in games on North America, and I know it's North America, so it's one of the bigger servers, and I don't know anybody. Like I don't often run into the same people. It's really, really uncommon that I run into the same people. Maybe in a single session I'll bump into a player and then I queue and then I bump into him again. But by and large, I'm running into crazy variants of different players and people that I've never met before. So I think that we do have the player base to support a matchmaking system like this. I absolutely do.
I think it simply doesn't exist, and there are things that they could do inside the system that they currently have that are much better than trying to overhaul this system completely to placate some of the most hardcore gamers inside of Unite.
Okay, so I think that that's a big fallacy right there. I don't think that what I'm asking for is for just the top 1%. I think that you have to look at the redesign of the entire rank system and almost the entire game, not from a gameplay standpoint, from the entire game systems and matching systems and playlists as a way to serve the whole community. And that's an important part, right? Because whenever I talk about wanting to change all this, people have thrown it at me like, oh, dude, not everybody's at your skill level. Not everybody is a super sweat, blah, 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 blah. But you have to understand the side effect that it would have, or like the positive impact that it would have on the entire player base. For lower rated players, they would have much more fair games and a way to actually prove themselves and grind through a system. For players that are, like your Pikachu that runs attack weight and shit, like Shell Bell, Cinderace, those players would absolutely hit hard skill floors or skill ceilings in the rank system, and they would get stuck at, say, like veteran or expert or somewhere mid ultra, and they would be forced to like, what the fuck? Why am I not grinding? Why am I not climbing anymore? And it might make, and I know Jake has said this in the past, players more curious. He said the players aren't very curious in this game, and I agree. It's because they have no reason to be. And so giving a system like this would make players more curious. It would make them wonder why they're not winning. It would maybe make them explore the fact that their builds are bad. It would maybe make the player base better. It would be that scenario where you can have your cake and eat it too, because you can have a serious rank system and have something that they can actually engage with. But at the same time, if they do want to just play casually, then you would have that built out for standard with rewards through daily, weekly challenges. Again, it's not as simple as just changing it and wanting to serve the highest player base in the game. It's about serving everybody. It's about serving the game better matches for every skill level at all tiers, all the way down from standard matches where people don't give a shit about ranked at all and just want to queue in with 15-second queue time and play whatever they want, all the way up to the highest skill tier, solo duo, people playing pick ban draft, waiting 10 minutes for a match, because I do think that would happen for the 1% of players that queue at the highest rank. But it would serve everybody in that entire spectrum, which is the entire player base at large.
Know what the numbers exactly would be, but it feels like you would need 10 times the amount of players to make a system like this really work. Where
I do want to talk about player density with matchmaking. This is a law of matchmaking. There's two main rules to matchmaking, or ways that you should absolutely think about matchmaking. One, matchmaking is never perfect. It doesn't exist. There's not a single perfect matchmaking system that's ever been created. It does not exist. It's not real. Two, the more players you have, the better matchmaking can be. So that is true. The more people you have, the better it can be. But I don't think that we're too short of people to do it or to try it.
you're really paired into better games, because the question of queue times really depends on how long does it take for a player that is of relative skill to hop on the game and start playing, because they have a lot of players who may be a bit higher, maybe a bit lower, but they might not have someone right around your skill level. And how long will a player wait for that skill-based perfect match-made game that you believe is out there? And I think the answer to that is not very long. And I think
so again, this kind of goes back into MMR buckets, where I was talking about how, like, in this scenario, Jake's talking about like that perfectly made game. And that seems like he's talking about, like, you know, again, I'm using MMR values, but like 1,000 versus 1,000 with 5 times players. That is that perfect game, right? Well, perfect little star or whatever. That's not really a game that needs to exist. It could exist and that would be fine. But really what you need is like a 700 player, an 800 player, a 1,000 player, a 1,000 player, and like a 700 player. And then you would do versus, and you know what? Let's do the math on this, because this is what reasonable matchmaking is, and it's within a bucket. So you do 700 plus 700 plus 800 plus 2,000 for the last 2 players, and then you divide that by 5, 840. I don't know why I didn't hit enter. So then you would have an average team of 840, and then you would try to make a similar game. So maybe you have a 900 player, a 1,000 player, an 800 player. Whoops, that's bad. 800 player and a 700 player. So now you have an 840 team going up against 1,000 plus 900 plus 800 plus 800 plus 700 equals, divided by 5 equals an 840 team. And so now you have an evenly matched game. And you would say, well, Krashy, this is really similar to the way that it is now, because you have a higher rated player, you know, having to play with like lower rated players. And it's like, yeah, that's true, but the variance isn't so big. So in my original scenario where I had Chris Heroes, if y'all remember earlier in the video, I said Chris Heroes is like, you know, a 4,000 rated player carrying 1,000 rated players. Look at the variance there. Like, he's literally, you know, 4 times this player's level. This is not that variance. So you don't need the perfect game. You need more reasonable games. And this is the way that matchmaking should work. And this would exist in one of those buckets. Remember, it would exist in a bucket. And then over here, we would have the smaller bucket with all the really high level players. So a Chris Heroes, this is Chris, right? Chris Heroes, he would never, ever even enter a match like this. It would not even be possible. So really, really important to think about matchmaking in that way as well.
The players who want that are not very large. The reason I think I can say that with a lot of confidence is if players wanted this experience, more teams would compete in the UCS.
No, I hated whenever he said this, because it was probably the thing that I disagreed with him on the most. Let me explain what I believe are all the different types of players that engage in MOBAs. You have super casuals, like super casuals. These people play quick play, standard exclusively. They just want to hop on and play Pokemon. They don't care about anything else. That's a messed up R, but you get the point. Then you have casuals. These players will probably spend the majority of their time in standards. And again, this is all within like actual good systems. They'll probably spend the majority of their time in standards. They might dabble in ranked a little bit, but they're mostly by and large casual. They just want to play and have fun. Then you have the casual competitor. These people are going to take the game seriously. They're going to spend most of their time in ranked. They're going to play and try to grind as much as they can, but they don't have aspirations of being competitive. Then you have competitive players. These players are going to hard grind ranked, whether it's solo, duo, queue, or teams. They're going to try to put themselves as high as they can, kind of like the casual competitor, but at the same time, they're also going to build teams and go into the UCS. There is different levels of players that play this game, and I think not having a ranked mode, you can't make the jump from like, oh well, if these players did want a more ranked competitive experience, they would just play UCS. It's like, that's a huge jump. I am a very competitive person, and I know that this is anecdotal, just speaking from my personal perspective, but I am super competitive, and I want to play as a casual competitor. I want to get as high as I can on a leaderboard just by playing solo queue. And guess what? Chris Heroes is the same way. Maybe he falls a little bit more in the casual competitor to competitor status because he has played in tournaments. I mean, I have too. And maybe if there was like more of a return for his time to play UCS, he would maybe do it. But Chris Heroes, for his content, for the way that he likes to play games, he's a casual competitor as well. So to say like, oh, well, I think if people wanted this experience, they would just sign up for the UCS. Absolutely not. It's probably the biggest thing I disagree with on Jake on this, because there's just different strokes for different folks. We want to play the game the way we want to play it, and currently that game does not exist that way, and so we provide feedback on that. And so again, do I ever think that any of this is going to change? No. In fact, I'm 99% positive that we will never get this version of the game that I'm talking about, but I'm giving you a utopian version of Pokemon Unite that I think would not only play well, would serve the entire community, and would grow. I think that content numbers would get bigger. I think player base numbers would get bigger. I think that you would see Twitch viewership rise. I think that you would probably see competitive thrive more. I think that this would be the absolute ultimate way to improve the game, is by building out all of these systems, building out standard to be more casual for people to play for challenges, building out rank to be a solo duo, casual competitive experience, having the UCS for professionals, having quick play and standards for super casuals, having better rewards, having things for people to grind for, playing in this MOBA, an actual MOBA. And unfortunately, Pokemon Unite is barely that.
And more players would play in things like the server that Krashy had a while back, or the Red Lock or something like that.
That's true, but servers like that have their own issues.
Excited players that want something like that, but the vast majority of people do not want this system inside the game, and do not want to have to deal with a longer queue time and a longer setup in Pokemon Unite. They actually want something much simpler. I'll talk about that now.
Now, I agree. I think that the majority of people don't necessarily want the most hardcore system, but that, again, you can have your cake and eat it too. They could engage with it when they want to, and if they don't want to, they could play standard. They can, super casual players can play quick play, and then competitive casual competitors, people that do want to test themselves on the ranked ladder, could play the ranked ladder. So it's again, it's not about just serving one side of the community or the other. It's about serving everybody.
I think the biggest issue with matchmaking and ranked and all of this in Pokemon Unite is that at times inside the game, the matches simply aren't fun. The meta is bad. Balance is one of Pokemon Unite's biggest issues.
So this whole point here, it's tough, because I completely agree with the sentiment of everything he's about to say, but I think it's entirely unrelated and irrelevant to the matchmaking rank discussion. The reality of why I believe that it's entirely irrelevant to basically the last 55 minutes of me talking, is because balance and whether or not a system is good have nothing to do with each other. It absolutely does make the game worse. I completely agree. I completely think that it is the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of players. They're so sick of dealing with Zacian. They're so sick of dealing with Mewtwo that it's the thing that's really breaking the camel's back, but it's also opening the door for people to be frustrated and to maybe open their eyes to why new changes to systems like this could exist and would be better to begin with. So balance always matters, but here's the kicker. If you had a serious rank system, like everything I've described for almost an hour now, if you had that serious rank system, and on top of that you had a pick ban phase, then balance is actually less relevant to begin with, because you could just ban out the most broken thing in the game, and that's what happens in every MOBA. Now here's the thing, balance still does matter, but even if you had that perfect utopian version of Unite and the game was a little unbalanced, I would still play it, because guess what? I could ban it, I could pick it, I could use it, I would still complain about balance, I would still want them to continue to iterate about balance, but here's the thing, there's no such thing as a balanced MOBA. It doesn't exist. There are balance iterations. There's a version of the game and something is strong, and then the next patch they change it, something else is strong, and the next patch they change it, something else is strong. So balance, like chasing balance is what you do. Achieving balance is never done. And So I think that this is all a complete irrelevant point when it comes to talking about the rank system, the matchmaking, the way that this game could be better, although it is still a very serious and relevant point. So it's a bit weird to be overly dismissive, and we're going to listen to it and I'm going to agree with it all, but I don't think that has anything to do with what I'm talking about personally.
They have lots of times inside the game where the balance is actually pretty good, and then they have many times inside the game as well.
I agree.
Especially recently, where the balance is completely all over the place. You have Pokemon that are so incredibly good that not having one of them on your team is such a detriment that it feels like not even playing when you see you don't have one on your side, but then you don't want to play it because you feel like an absolute cringe lord every single YouTube list. Balance, without question, is a massive issue in Pokemon Unite. And if you fix balance, you would fix the way people felt about queuing into games almost immediately.
Yes and no. You would fix the people that are mostly just struggling with balance issues, but it would not fix any of the other issues. And again, I think that like for a lot of the people, the reason why a lot of players and the majority of players aren't even having this discussion that I'm having about changing basically the whole game is because, to be completely honest, they don't even know that this is an option. They don't even understand why this would be an option. I'm not calling them stupid, but a lot of people that play Unite aren't veteran MOBA players. A lot of people don't understand the necessity for this, and a lot of people don't understand that having a more serious ranked mode would be healthy for the game and better for the game, better for content, better for viewership, better for the entire player base, because they could have their fast matches in standard and still have something to grind for, and actually have something to grind for. That's the thing. If you want to keep playing right now for a 1600 sticker, by all means, don't complain about it. But if you can dare to dream for something bigger, you can dare to see the game for what it could be. And a lot of us, I promise you, there's a lot of competitive players, a lot of content creators, or at least myself and like Chris, casual competitive players, people that just want to grind, and even like viewers of mine, people that pay attention to my tweets and my sentiments, they just want a much more serious system to engage with, so that way it feels worth their time, because the alternative is to maybe play a little bit and then stop playing.
Pokemon Unite absolutely needs to have a healthy balance. That is,
I agree. Every game needs to have a healthy balance.
To fix matchmaking.
It won't fix matchmaking at all.
The next thing that they could do is once
it doesn't
you
fix matchmaking.
Hit Master Rank, which is essentially Pokemon Unite's version of the ranked system inside the game. Once you do hit Master Rank and you've kind of made it through essentially the tutorial of ranked that Pokemon Unite puts you through, at that point I think they should add a ban phase or a draft phase inside the game to mirror a more competitive environment. Not only will this allow for more balance inside the game, it will allow for more teamwork inside the game as well, and I think you will start to see players increase in their skill level by seeing a mode like this, even without necessarily matching them much more precisely.
Absolutely not. Absolutely 100% not. If you have a pick ban phase in the game the way it is exactly right now, I can guarantee you with 100% accuracy that people will not get better. Not really. No, 99% accuracy. The reason why is because they're still going to climb losing. They're still going to pick lane Cinderace. They're still going to be in your matches. You're still going to have to carry them. You're still going to get them up to Masters because you're carrying them. And they're still going to like lose their way forward. So no, it wouldn't make people much better. They might get a little bit more introspective about why people are picking and banning things, and that could maybe challenge them a little bit, but they're still going to get the same results of climbing and winning games and losing games and still making it to Masters. So no, I absolutely disagree with this point. I don't think that just adding a pick ban phase would change anything about the matchmaking at all. I don't think that balancing the game changes anything with matchmaking at all. It doesn't. It does absolutely nothing the more balanced the game is to improve or fix or better matchmaking. It just doesn't. It doesn't do anything at all. Now, this is a fun part that I have the opportunity of giving some of my compromises, because I've given you the game needs to have pick ban phase, the game needs to be solo duo queue. There are actually some compromises in there. You can have all of this at rank 1, starting at rookie, where it's pick ban phase solo duo queue, or, and I think that that's best, but guess what, I can compromise, or you can just shove it all the way back to Masters. So have the game, again, have your cake and eat it too with ranked. Let players play a much more casual version of ranked leading up to the serious version of ranked. And Chris Heroes is the one that has mostly brought this idea on. And when I heard it, I was like, oh yeah, it's actually a really good idea, where you can have essentially the same exact rank system. I think that climbing through the ranks should still be harder regardless, but you can have essentially the same structure of a system where it's a flex queue, and no pick ban phase for, rookie all the way through ultra. And then as soon as you step into Masters, boom, solo duo queue only with pick ban phase. And that, I think, is a healthy compromise. So there are ways to compromise and not make the game the sweatiest thing forever, always, but at the same time, still being able to provide that competitive experience for the higher end of the ladder, which is Masters Plus.
And then finally, something does need to be done about the extremely low win rate players that are essentially not playing this video game and they are griefing their teams or they are AFKing.
So it's weird. So he kind of clumps in two different people, two different types of people together here. He said something needs to be done about the really extremely low win rate players. I would put a pause in that and say, and the players that are essentially quitting, griefing, and AFKing games, because they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. And I agree. What needs to be done about low win rate players, pause, is that they should be stuck in lower matches. That's what my proposed changes would do. What needs to be done about AFKers, griefers, and people that are like literally throwing games is that they need to actually ban people in this game. They don't do it. You have a report button that I promise you does nothing. So yeah, that all needs to change too. More changes to the game that the game needs that we'll probably never see. So I agree. Although I wouldn't clump all those people exactly together because I think that there is a little bit of nuance in that. But yeah, dude, being and I'm so sorry to say this because I know someone's going to hear this and it's going to hurt their feelings. Being lower than 50% win rate, it means you're not good. That's exactly what it means. I don't care what your counter thoughts are. I don't care if you play solo queue only. I don't care if you're a support main. It means that the impact that you're having on your games consistently, game over game over game, is less than enough to win more than half your games. It's not impactful enough. You need to improve. So yeah, low win rate players should be stuck at a lower bracket, a lower bucket of matchmaking, a lower skill tier, a lower rank. And griefers need to be banned.
These players should face serious punishment or
I agree.
be allowed into the ranked mode.
Absolutely agree.
Actual punishment for grief and AFK inside the game, actual balance, and an
Yes.
actual draft phase, you would have a very solid ranked mode inside of Pokemon Unite.
Well, I don't agree with that,
while
but
it would not satisfy everyone. It would be the kind of ranked mode that Pokemon Unite is trying to deliver, done well. It's very easy for us all to say
that I agree with.
That we think Pokemon Unite should change something completely, but let's be fair, we know what Pokemon Unite is trying to make.
Money. I was waiting for this for so long. Money. That's what they're trying to make. They're trying to make a shit game that makes a lot of money, and that's what they have.
I think the best thing we could do is have the best possible version of that we can have.
And that's what I've proposed.
It's easy to say I think Pokemon Unite should be a battle royale game. It's not. It's not a battle royale game. I would love it to be more like TFT. Well, it's not TFT. Maybe it should be a shooter. Maybe it doesn't want to be those things.
So this like talking point that he goes off on, like, oh well, like you know, like it needs to be what it wants to be and it's not these other things. I don't really get it. I think it's mostly like a comedic thing, but I actually like have to disagree with it. Even though I think it's like mostly like a small bit, I have to disagree with it because Pokemon Unite is trying to be a MOBA. It is, and albeit, you know, a slightly different mechanical version of a MOBA where you're scoring points instead of destroying towers in a core. It is a MOBA. We all know that, right? Like, we know that's the market they're going after. We know that that's the style game that they're going after. It's the mechanics that they've gone after. They built in the Unites. They built in the passives. Like, we know that this is a MOBA. They're trying to be a MOBA. So to say like, oh, it's not trying to be these other games, like, yeah, I agree with that, but it's a moot point. To say that it shouldn't try to be like other MOBAs is just wrong, right? Like, why shouldn't it try to be like other MOBAs that have been around for a decade plus, that have these systems? They have the standard modes, they have the serious modes, they have the ranked modes. So I don't really like this part of the video because I feel like it feels like a little like silly and dismissive.
Pokemon Unite is clearly showing you the kind of game it wants to be.
A mobile cash grab
version of that could be much, much better.
My version.
Without question, matches and matchmaking in Pokemon Unite could be more balanced and more competitive. And I, of course, would be open to hearing about how they could do that and
gotcha.
how it wouldn't affect the player base inside the game.
I've done that here.
Drastically affect the queue times inside of Pokemon Unite. There are people in the community who are very outspoken about matchmaking. I have to give credit to people like Krashy and Black CH. While I don't fully agree with them on their take and what should be done with Pokemon Unite, I absolutely understand where they are coming from and why they would want to see changes to the ranked system. I think we all would like positive changes for Pokemon Unite.
I agree.
I just think we are looking at a situation from a few different angles, and I think some people are looking at this situation from a game player only perspective, and I'm trying to look at this situation from not only a player perspective but from Pokemon Unite's perspective, and how do you keep players inside the game and keep players playing and people excited for Pokemon Unite. And these two things do clash at some point.
If you build it, they will come. A better product will retain more players, and I think that the fallacy from Pokemon Unite, Timmy, Tencent, Nintendo, you know, the Pokemon Company International, I think that the fallacy is is not protecting and nurturing this amazing product that they have and putting out a lazy, almost disturbingly over monetized and disrespectful to the player base version. That's what we have. We have a game that is highly monetized and disrespectful to the player and their money. And I think that there's an opportunity for this game to be a very high quality and respectful and mutually beneficial product. Because I think that if you build out the game the way that I've explained, I think the game grows. And I'm not saying that the game's not growing now, but you're not seeing viewership rise. And as far as the Galaxy numbers, which is the only player base numbers we have to go off of, those numbers are going down, and that happens. There's pitfalls and rises that happens with different patches and lulls in balance. But I think that if you build this system, you would retain more players, possibly grow the game larger than it could ever have been grown, and you would have a game that feels like you can trust and respect the developers. I'm going to ask a question, and I want everybody that comments that's made it this far to put this at the end of your comment. Do you trust these developers? Do you trust them to continue to make a great game or to turn the game into a great game? Because I know what your answer is.
Queue times and having the ranked system have a complete overhaul so it is more appealing to people who are very, very intense about ranking up inside of a game changes what Pokemon Unite is and can have very detrimental effects on the player base of the game.
Or it could be the best thing that ever happens and grows the game to new heights.
There's more I could say about this, but I made another video about this that was like 30
Yep,
plus
well, I'm an hour
minutes long,
plus.
I was just like, it's too long, it's too boring. So here is my take on matchmaking inside of Pokemon Unite. I think there's some great things they can fix. I understand why people say fix matchmaking and some of the changes they want. I think they're totally valid. I also think that they are looking at Pokemon Unite in a way that is just not what Pokemon Unite is trying or wants to be.
And that's the problem, right? Like I think that not looking at it this way is to concede that you have a game that doesn't care about you and just wants your money. And if anybody can contest that point with like a decent talking point, I'd love to hear it, because I think that it's very obvious that this game is built to just steal as much money from you as possible based on the fact that you're nostalgic about the characters. Like I don't engage with spending money on this game financially, because why the fuck would I? It's not a game that I appreciate. It's not a game that I trust the developers on. It's not a game that I feel respects my time and my efforts. It's not a game that gives me a tangible grind or something to play for. And again, I think that the important part is that you have to recognize that all of the changes, not just one or two or some of the changes that I proposed or the ideas that I have, would serve the entire player base. Every single player would have a better experience across the board because these systems would exist. Now, there is a small margin where like you could say like, oh, well, what about the people that want to continue to play the game super casually but like getting a rank for it? Well, it's like, yeah, those players would lose that, I guess, but that doesn't exist in any other MOBA or any other competitive game ever where you can like dick off and get to the highest rank. So again, I think that the benefit of growing the player base and gaining players because there's something to play for, and returning players coming back, and maybe new players trying the game because they've heard that the game is good and actually worth grinding and playing, would outweigh the potential losses, or at least just like minor disdain that people would have because they can't dick off and hit the highest rank in the game. Name one other ranked game in the world where you can have a negative win rate and get to the highest game. I would love to hear it. Maybe there is one, but I don't think so.
Pokemon Unite has a very, very competitive aspect to it, the Unite Championship Series, and it also has more tournaments that it's putting on inside of their game. I think they are trying to have a section that is carved out for the most competitive players, and then I think they are trying to have another section that is carved out for people who are relatively competitive but also want to pick up the game and have fun and not have to feel like they have to play the meta every single game because otherwise their rank is destroyed.
That's what every ranked game in the world is. I hate this point because it doesn't make any sense. Like people want to play the game and they don't want to feel like they're forced to play meta, otherwise they're going to tank their rank. That's every ranked game in the world. If you load up TFT and you play ranked and you build some bullshit team comp, you're going to lose. If you load up League of Legends and you don't play relatively meta relevant heroes and you play, you're going to lose. It's if you play Valorant and you use a pistol every single round, you're going to fucking lose. Like, that's every ranked experience that's ever existed in every game that has a ranked mode ever. So the question is, does this game deserve to have a ranked mode? And if it does, then do it right. Either remove the ranked mode and have a shit casual cash grab game, or fix the ranked mode and have a game that could potentially grow and thrive because of the fact that it's an actual game worth playing.
Let me know what you think in the comments.
That's what I think.
Like to see with Pokemon Unite. There really is no wrong answer here, but my big thought here is we can try all we want to get Pokemon Unite to be a different
Yeah, they're
thing.
not going to do it.
I would rather see Pokemon Unite be the best thing that it is trying to be.
And so that's the thing. That's the concession, right? Like, I think the concession is that, like, you can either dream big like me and try to make it the best version of a short form MOBA that has Pokemon in it to begin with, or you can concede the fact that it's a cash grab and try to make it a slightly better cash grab. And I think that that's the difference. I absolutely love Jake, but I disagree with almost everything that he said in here, except for, like, yeah, the game needs better balance, and a couple other points, right? Like, people need to be punished for being assholes, and yeah, that's about it. I think that you have to look at the game on so many different layers and so many different directions and so many different dimensions. You have to dream about how big the game could be and about how much these kinds of systems could add to the game, while recognizing that you still really wouldn't change the experience for 99% of the player base. It would be a better experience, if anything. So, friends, those are my thoughts. Drop a like in the video. Much love to Jake and this conversation. I love having it. Again, I'm absolutely nothing but love for Jake. I love this shit. This shit is why I do it. I don't sit here and talk for an hour and 15 minutes about Pokemon Unite because I don't love it. It's been a fun treat. If you've made it this far, I definitely do appreciate it. Drop a like in the video, subscribe for future Pokemon Unite content. As always, be sure to be kind to one, tell someone you love them, and I'll see you in the next video.